Hi, thanks for joining us. Today I'm taking a look at a sweet wine from Bordeaux, from southwest France. So we're in the commune of Barsac. This is Doisy Daene 2015, and Doisy-Daëne is a second growth, a deuxième cru Classé, and owned by the Dubourdieu family. First, to sort of talk about Barsac. I mean, Barsac is a commune within the appellation, and entitled to use the appellation, should it wish, of Sauternes. There are 5 communes that make up the Sauternes region, which sits within the larger Graves region, which is sort of to the southeast of Bordeaux. I guess you're probably about an hour's drive from the town in most cases. At the north of the appellation, you've got these two communes, Barsac and Prignac, and they sort of border on the Garonne River, and they tend to make sort of slightly lighter style of wines. And further inland you have communes of Balmes, Fargues and Sauternes itself, which tend to make fuller, richer wines. The reason that this area is where sweet wine is made in Bordeaux, here and just across the river from it as well, is the fact that here the Seronne River joins the Garonne, and you have a joining of a warmer and a cooler body of water that creates regular mists, and that mist and the moisture that's created, that mist consists of, creates rot in the vineyards, and the rot that we're looking for is something called botrytis, or noble rot, and that enables the grapes to actually shrivel on the vine, which concentrates sugars and acids in the wine, which enables the production of a balanced sweet wine. So yeah, of these 5 communes, only Barsac is entitled to have its own name on a label, and actually, as I say, the producers of Sauternes can use the name Sauternes. In fact, the producers of Barsac can use the name Sauternes. In fact, I've come across producers who've said they will ask importers which they actually want on the label. So there can be some slight confusion there, but in general, as I say, these are lighter styles from closer to the river. Of the estates of Barsac, 3 of them have the name Doisy in them. So there's Doisy Daene, Doisy Dubourdieu and Doisy Vedrine. And that's come from the fact that the Doisy estate in the early 19th century was split into 3 through inheritance. 3 sons inherited, and it was split into 3 portions. As recently as 2014, the Dubourdieu family, who own Doisy Daene, who actually bought the property that is Doisy Dubourdieu, and have had to replant all the vines there because they'd been pulled up, and will be running that as a separate estate. I think their first vintage of wines from that was 2019, so that will be very exciting to look at as well. So to the history of Doisy Daene and the Dubourdieu family. The estate was bought in 1924 by Georges Dubourdieu, and I suppose it comes to fame, really. I mean, it had already been classified as a second growth in 1855 during the classification of the Médoc and the Graves in Bordeaux. But it sort of rocketed to fame more recently when, in 2000, I think it was, Denis Dubourdieu, Georges' grandson, took over, and Denis was the professor of enology at Bordeaux University, and pioneered a number of improvements in the way, particularly Sauternes, white wines and Sauternes were made. One of which was the idea of fermenting a Sauternes, but including in that the lees from a dry white wine made from the same property. So giving more for the yeasts to feed on, making it making sure the fermentation finish through, which gives a cleaner flavour to the wines. So and I think that's been borne out in the fact that this wine has been an incredibly consistent one over the last 2 decades in Bordeaux in terms of its quality and also its pricing. Unfortunately, 2015 was the last vintage that Denis Dubourdieu presided over entirely. He died the following year in the July. which is a great loss to Bordeaux. He really was an inspirational mentor to many winemakers because he'd been training them at the university. The wine itself is, it's beautifully made, very carefully made. It will have been selected in the vineyard at every point, but it's actually fairly straightforwardly made. The wine ferments in barrel, and having been in barrel, it'll stay about a year it'll at about 3 months, having been kept separately as varieties. It will then be blended and will age for a year or so in oak, subsequent to that French oak. This particular vintage was 100% Semillon. They do have some Sauvignon Blanc there, although generally most of the Sauvignon Blanc goes into the dry white wines. A tiny portion normally makes it in, but this year it didn't. And my understanding is that this is a wine that has 136 grams per litre of sugar, so pretty reasonable sweetness there. So let's have a taste, shall we? First of all, let's look at the colour though. This is a relatively pale gold, deepish yellow gold. I'm swirling it, despite the fact that it has, high sugar levels. I suppose only 13.5% alcohol. It's not hugely. It's not particularly viscous. It is just starting to throw some tears down the edge of the glass, but not anything in particular. So let's have a look at the aromas. There's a lovely, clean intensity to that. You've got a rich, honeyed fruit. You've got notes of marzipan. You've got notes of really ripe sort of mango, nectarine, pineapple. Those sort of tropical fruits, just sort of juicily bursting there, almost sort of oily, syrupy sort of sweetness. And as I say, this underlying sort of marzipan note. There are hints of vanilla, perhaps, coming from the oak. And yes, honeyed notes. And there's a very clean aroma of botrytis, a sort of a lifted, almost sort of honeysuckle note in there. So let's have a taste. It's a very sweet wine, but it's got good acidity and it's very well balanced. Its poise is exquisite, frankly. Although there's sweetness there and there's a very clean sugariness, it's not at all syrupy or cloying at the finish. There's a lovely freshness. There's a sort of an underlying citric, I suppose it's almost sort of mandarin, sort of orangey note underlying everything there. They're giving a lovely clean finish, which is allowing those sort of mandarin notes to carry on. At the core, there's a sort of a rich honeyed fruit. Again, notes of that sort of honeysuckle. I was talking about the good acidity. Pineapple comes through, and that's a fruit with lovely acidity there. Intense sort of mango, nectarine flavour. The nectarine is, when I'm talking about nectarine, I'm talking about really ripe, juicy nectarine, and the acidity is giving that juiciness to the fruit, and that's lasting really nicely on the finish, and just giving all those different flavours coming through as the wine finishes. It's not got an enormous body. It's midweight at most. Flavours are lasting really beautifully. Frankly, I have to say, I can't really think of many properties that have done a better job over the last 20 years of maintaining quality, consistency and value for money throughout Bordeaux in terms of either reds, whites or sweets. I can't think of anybody who's done significantly better than Doisy Daene. I think this is excellent value for money. If you like sweet wines, it's well worth searching it out. So yes, thank you for watching. I hope you find this of interest. Bye now.